Star Fallen by Tom Wolvers. 101 child. Marnie had a pot boiling on the stove and had just gone over to wash her hands in the sink when she saw a strange twinkling star in the sky. It was a cool fall evening, cloudless, with a moon high. This was why it caught her attention so quickly when it flickered in an array of colors. Red, blue, green, yellow, purple. Was this some trick of the moonlight? Some atmospheric anomaly? Marnie leaned forward so her face nearly pressed to the window glass, watching it. The light show continued, a quick succession flashing from one to another. "John," she called, "you gotta see this. Come quick." Her 15-year-old son, an avid lover of sci-fi, grumbled from his Dungeons and Dragons game and unfolded his long legs before standing up. "Must be a satellite, huh?" he said as she pointed her finger at the mysterious rainbow. "I'm not sure. How odd." The faint gleam was growing larger, the colors becoming more intense as it rapidly switched hues. "Maybe some kinda space junk," John offered. He towered over her now, despite his age. Marnie wondered where he got his height from. None of the men on her side of the family were all that tall, and neither were the men on his father's side. "Is that what it looks like when a star dies?" Marnie asked, drying her hands on a dish towel to relieve the crick in her neck. "I dunno, Ma. I'm not Sue." John's words stopped abruptly. The twinkle was doing something weird. It lifted like a cat stretching. Marnie had seen shooting stars before, but this wasn't like that at all. There was no bright trail of light behind. Instead, it plummeted in a spiral motion. How was that even possible? Rain lights grew in size and intensity with each looping circle. "I've never seen anything in the sky move like that," John said. "There's no way that's a star," his voice faltered. Suddenly, the house shook. The light grew brighter. Their backyard was no longer draped in shadows, but was bright as day outside. Lawn furniture cast in a shimmering, colorful fireworks show. A lamp crashed in the living room. Pictures toppled from the walls. The TV stand and hall cabinet were banging up and down on the floor. "Get down!" Marnie screamed, grabbing John by his bony shoulders and pulling him to the floor. Kitchen cabinet doors smashed against their backs. Even seated on the ground, they had trouble keeping their balance. The shaking was so violent they hung suspended off the ground before thumping down again. A loud, piercing noise roared and engulfed them. Marnie dared not take her arms off John as they trembled on the floor, but he clasped his hands to his ears and tried to drown out the roar. Marnie felt a painful pop in her head, followed by a wave of intense dizziness. Her vision faded in and out as she struggled to stay conscious. John's mouth opened, screaming, only no sound came out. A wet trickle flowed over Marnie's neck and onto the collar of her shirt. There was a final massive tremor through the house. Marnie and John lifted several feet into the air and plunged back down again. Trying to catch himself, he landed with his arm in an awkward position. The force of his weight smashing into it broke the bone. Marnie saw his face contorted, but the silence was deafening. The shaking stopped. The house was a disaster. Splinters of wood and pieces of glass, plastic, scattered silverware, and pots and pans littered the faded linoleum. Lumps of egg salad splattered the floor from the dinner she'd been preparing. "My arm!" John hollered and tried to keep still, but the pain was so intense it was hard to keep from writhing. His stomach roiled with nausea. He turned his head and vomited, body trembling with shock. Marnie lay dazed beside him, her ears bloody. She had several scrapes and cuts on her arms and legs, but otherwise uninjured. "John," Marnie said in an unusually loud voice. She knew she was speaking, but couldn't hear anything. "Are you okay?" "I can't hear." Her hand touched his forearm, and he took it and squeezed her fingers. "I think my arm's broken, but I'm okay." He nodded and replied as loudly and slowly as he could, hoping she understood him or read his lips. "What happened?" Marnie shook her head. She wasn't sure what he was saying. He was cradling his arm, but was otherwise okay. Carefully, she stood up and searched for something she could use to stabilize it. Her dish towel by the sink peeked out from the carnage. She cleared off all the little shards of glass and debris. As she was coming back to help John, she stopped short. The panes of the kitchen window was gone. Jagged edges embedded in the frame were all that remained. A strange silver object edged with rainbow flashing lights sat among flaming trees, and a scorched mound of earth beyond the toppled backyard fence. Marnie stopped in her tracks. The otherworldly spiral had a point on top. The center pulsed and spun rainbows. While she watched, the colors faded, and the spinning slowed, fading away into darkness. Only the illumination from the burning treetops remained. "Oh, God, what the hell?" Marnie said, although she couldn't hear her surprised words. John supported his injured limb and groaned as he clambered to his feet. He approached his mother and followed her gaze. Flickers of movement shuddered on the side of the metallic object. A dark, androgynous figure appeared. Something about it was wrong, desperately wrong. John's eyes and brain couldn't fully comprehend the size and shape before him. He blinked hard, then squinted, trying to make out what it was. No matter what he did, he couldn't put form to the shadow. It kept slipping from his view, fuzzy and shifting. The longer he studied it, the more his head hurt. "It's coming this way," Marnie jolted into action. "We have to get out of here." Her too loud voice was shrill with panic. She turned to John and wrapped his arm with the towel into a makeshift sling. When she was done, she pushed him towards the door. It had hairline, vertical cracks, but remained intact. They shuffled around the upturned and shattered furniture into the front entrance when the door flew open. John and Marnie shrieked in surprise. The unrecognizable black void stood there, hurting their heads, straining their eyes and giving them a massive headache. It shifted, flickered, and twitched in ways that were physically impossible, both still and moving at the same time. Monster and alien death scenes played on the big screens of their mind. This was it? The end. Blackness approached. Glass crunched underfoot. The shape's attention shifted downward. Its darkness partially swallowed an old picture of the family. John remembered the day he took the photo. He stood next to his dad, his fish held high. His mom leaned against his shoulder. Sarah was standing next to him, her arms crossed over her ribcage, her lower lip jutting out. There was a tiny fish in the ice chest at her feet. She hated not being the best. It was the last picture they'd taken of Sarah. His younger sister drowned in the lake a few hours later. The blackness stilled, transfixed by the image. John couldn't tell if it had a head, so to speak, but it squatted, collapsing in on itself. As it returned to its original height, the surrounding air changed. John felt pressure building and struggled to breathe. His skin felt hot, sweaty, and flushed. His eyes darted over to his mom to see she was sweating too, water pouring off her skin and rolling down her arms. John's underarms felt soggy and his shirt was sticking to him like he'd been out running track or playing basketball for hours. Marnie's eyes were aching. Her head was pounding. Looking at this thing, whatever it was increasing her blood pressure so much she could hear the pounding of her heart between her ruptured eardrums. She watched the form reach down for the photo of them at the lake. The last photo she had of her family all together, and transform. The black became lighter. The edges became more defined and less disjointed. Its bottom half split into two long, skinny, sun-tanned legs. The middle shrank and pinched to find a waist and chest. The top condensed into a circle and became the high cheekbones, wide nose, and soft brown eyes she imagined at night in her dreams. Finally, the darkness separated from the sides into two slender arms with regal fingers. An older Sarah, had she lived, stood before them. Sarah? John said in amazement. A warmth washed over him, intensified in his hurt arm, and his skin grew clammy and cold. The pressure built up in the air was gone, too. Now his skin prickled from the crisp fall temperature outside. With the return to sensation came the realization the pain in his arm was gone. He gingerly flexed the fingers on his injured arm. Surprise crossed his features. The bone had healed, pain gone. "What are you? Are you doing this?" Marnie asked, and she could hear her own voice again. Her sweaty skin felt tingly all over, especially near her ears. She could hear again. The thing that wore Sarah's body stared at them. It raised a hand to its now human-looking face and traced fingers over the cheek and chin. No sound came out when it opened its mouth. Sarah's jaw twitched, her throat muscles working feverishly. A nasal squeal came out, more of a low whine rather than an actual word. Some emotion akin to puzzlement came over its facial features. Her mouth swung open and closed, a fish out of water, then said plain as day, "Sarah." The word slid off her tongue with an unusual slurry of consonants and eerie pitch in vowels. A grin broke across her face, matching the one John wore in the photo. "I need your help," she said.